If you've been playing Warhammer 40,000 for a pretty decently long time and you feel like you should just be a better player than you actually are, this video and this entire series that we're starting today is for you. Now here's the deal. Most players don't get stuck just because they're bad. It's not why you're stuck. You get stuck because you keep doing the same things for reasons that you don't notice. So this series actually isn't going to be about rules, list, or tactics. It's going to be about something much more insidious and much more powerful that's going to make you a much better player. This is going to be way more important than any individual rule in the game. This is about human freaking psychology. Now, a lot of people really like to liken Warhammer 40,000 to chess. Like it's a game of positions and anticipating your opponent's moves and all these things. And that's true, 40k is a lot like a game of chess, but I personally prefer to liken a game of Warhammer 40,000 to poker. See, in poker, you have mathematically correct decisions. When you have a certain hand, you know it's going to beat 93% of other hands based off of the cards that are currently on the table. And there is a mathematically correct choice to make, but it's not that simple. Because you're not just playing math, you're not just playing averages. Very similarly to how in Warhammer 40,000, we're actually not just playing averages and playing, mathematics. We're not only fighting the dice. We're playing a human opponent, and human opponents have human psychology. So in poker, just like in Warhammer 40,000, oftentimes the correct decision might be the mathematically incorrect decision, based off of how you're reading your opponent, based off of how your opponent is actually performing on the battlefield. This is a very, very big deal. And then sometimes you might have nothing, but you can just throw a lie out there. You could throw a big old bluff. And I'm not referring to like a gotcha or lying about your rules. I'm saying you can pretend to be strong where you're really not that strong due to things that it's going to force your opponent to respond to. So I enjoy likening the game of Warhammer 40,000 to the game of poker much, much more. So, most people who are watching this already know a lot about Warhammer 40,000, like a lot. You know about heroic interventions, you know about advanced roles, you know about overwatches. And the problem isn't really knowing enough about Warhammer. Now, for some of you who are brand new, okay, we always got to build our knowledge bases, but the problem is that when the game gets stressful, you're actually going to stop doing what you know to do. That's not a knowledge problem, it's actually a psychology problem. So we're going to break down human psychology specifically for wargamers in this series. This is going to be a fairly long series, but it's going to dramatically improve everyone out there as far as your gameplay is concerned. And heck, along those lines, maybe we'll learn a little bit of something that we can use for life outside of 40k as well. I personally learn a lot about life from Warhammer 40,000. Sounds weird, but as we go through this series, you guys are going to really understand why. My business has grown because of me playing Warhammer 40,000, and that's not just because of content, that's just because I've learned how to critically think and how to strategically think. My relationships have improved because I've learned how to communicate better, say with opponents, for example. Everything can improve from the way you perceive Warhammer 40, from the way that you approach Warhammer 40,000 if you apply these rules to your real life as well. And honestly, a lot of times real life solutions apply to 40k as well. One of my favorite live streams I ever did, which I probably need to do again, honestly, I went through The Art of War, The Book of Five Rings, General Patton's Manual of War. I went through several of these actual books on war strategies and I applied it to Warhammer 40,000. It was actually awesome. And now that I'm saying it, I am going to redo this because I'm going to do it even better. Because these war strategies are just reflections of real life. Did you know that back in ancient feudal Japan, Kanto, which is like, I believe it was called kanji, pardon me, it's kanji. It's like the art of writing Japanese letters. And if I'm butchering that, someone correct me in the comments, doesn't matter. Well, the masters of this finesse of writing these fancy letters and these fancy shapes and stuff were actually the sword masters. So your sword masters learned about combat and war by perfecting the art of drawing these complex shapes, which was really, really surprising for a lot of people, but it was very true. So we're going to do the same thing about Warhammer, applying it to life and life applying it to Warhammer. So let's dive into this thing. I'm going to explain a game, and I want you to tell me if this sounds familiar to you. You deploy fine, the game starts. By turn 2 or 3, something just feels a little bit off. You're a little behind on points, or you're a little out of position, or really you just find out that you're just reacting instead of acting. And in your head, you're thinking, this just isn't right. But you still don't change it. And so after the game, someone else is going to ask you, hey, how did the match go? And you're going to say something along the lines of, yeah, I know what I did wrong. I just didn't execute. Now that sentence sounds honest, but it's hiding the real problem. And the problem isn't execution. It's that during the game, you were making decisions to feel safe, not to win. That might sound odd, but everyone does this. So I'm going to introduce a concept in psychology to you called pain avoidance. I'm going to explain how it applies to 40k and how recognizing this is going to turbo boost your results. When a game gets tense, your brain isn't actually asking, hey, what's the best move here? What it's asking is, hey, what hurts the least if something goes wrong? How can I protect myself from shame, embarrassment, loss, all these things? And it might sound silly to you that our brains naturally respond to Warhammer 40k this way, but it's true because that's the way your neurology freaking works. And take it from me, I literally teach postgraduate neurology. That's what I do as a professional. All right, so you don't fully commit to an objective. You actually split your army instead of choosing a side. You just hold your resources back just in case. You're making moves that feel reasonable, but they don't really change the game. The reason for this is that those moves don't feel bad. They feel responsible, but they only exist for one reason, and that's to protect you from being obviously wrong. Let me give you a really good example of this, okay? So I'm playing in the finals of a major maybe 2 years ago. And during this major, in the finals, we're on this wild freaking map. It was a custom map that was made. And I was playing against super shooty invasion fleet Tyranids, and I was running index Blood Angels. And so I didn't have access to advanced charge. I just had 12-inch move, charge, hope I make it. And the center of this map was completely wide open. But due to the way that the ruins and the terrain was really set up, it was going to take an entire turn to get out of the deployment zone and into the center of the map. So if my opponent went first, what was going to happen is he was going to end up getting into the center and just get ready. And since there's nowhere to stage in the center, I would have to either sit in my deployment zone or just stand out in the open and get shot to pieces. But on the flip side, if I went first, I was going to be able to stand out in the open, not get shot from my opponent just due to the way the terrain was set up, because they were going to have to spend an entire turn getting out into the lanes to be able to move and shoot. So basically what would happen here is whoever went first had a huge advantage. Now, I went second. Now, the safe thing, the thing that would have protected me emotionally, that would have been like, okay, cool, let's get this score. Now I got to play cagey. Now I got to figure out how to trade. Now I got to figure out how to get these secondary points, all these things. That would have been the smart play. And in all reality, unless I just scored amazingly on secondaries and my opponent scored really poorly on secondaries, I was going to end up losing by 15 points in the last round if we played with that. Or what I could do is I could actually take the thing that has more risk but actually gives me the best chance of winning, which is I could put all of my models on the line and hope that I roll a few freaking 12 up charges. Or I'm sorry, 11 and 10-inch charges. And that's what I did. And I landed them, which means I won the major. Now, this is an example of me not succumbing to pain avoidance. I'll give you another one of me succumbing, avoiding pain as well. But because I was willing to fail, I was actually able to win. And otherwise, what would have been a relatively no-win scenario, even when I was playing comfortably and smart. So this is an example of saying no to pain avoidance. No, I'm not trying to feel good about my errors. I'm just going to accept what happens. If I get the charges, I win. If I don't, I'm going to lose. But if I had played smart, I would have lost anyway. All right. So those types of decisions, pain avoidance decisions, which would be the opposite of what I just told you, are things that just protect you from being obviously wrong. This is when we do things like, I'm going to wah with my orcs, but I'm only going to give you these 2 units. So just in case they don't connect and they don't kill what they need to kill, the rest of my army is not out in the open, which means you won't get to table me. But that's basically always going to be an error, because with orcs, or really with any army that has a go melee pressure turn, if you don't commit with everything, your opponent's just going to pick off the 1 or 2 pieces you did commit, and then they're going to be able to overwhelm you. That's just the way it's going to work. It requires a full committal to do this type of an activation. So, but people will do these half commits because it protects them from being obviously wrong, and that's a big problem. So here's the key line. Here's the thing that you guys need to remember about this. You're actually not avoiding losing when you make these half committal errors. You're really avoiding looking wrong. And here's why this matters. if you never fully commit to a decision, you're never going to get like clear feedback. And if you don't get clear feedback, then you really just don't learn. You're just going to feel frustrated. So here's the interesting part. You can hear this happening before you even see it on the table. And I know this because I coach clients for a living about how to get better at this freaking game. I can hear in the words that my player is using whether it was their fault or their opponent was just good enough to beat them. Because they're going to say things. I'm going to listen to them explain how the game went. And they're going to say things like, well, I didn't have a choice. Oh, I was just unlucky. Oh, that army was broken or bonkers. There was really just nothing I could do. All of these phrases, all of them, they do the exact same thing. They move responsibility away from the decision, which makes us feel good. This is pain avoidance. Now, once you say, I didn't have a choice, your brain stops asking, hey, what could I have done differently? Where could I have, made different choices? Where could I have staged in a different position? How could I have made it so that the dice couldn't have screwed me? And if you stop asking that question, improvement stops. That's the problem. So here's the difference. One player is going to say, I was forced into X decision, and they're going to feel better, but they don't get better because now they've passed responsibility off on, oh, I was forced into this decision. But another player says, I avoided committing to X decision earlier because I was nervous or because I was afraid of my opponent's presence or blah, 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 blah. Now that player is actually going to learn immediately because they're recognizing that it's their fault that they didn't commit to an area. And that's going to, inside their head, create a algorithm inside your brain to actually perform significantly better in the next game. Most players want to feel like a good player having a bad game. Very few people are willing to be a developing player learning in public. This is how I became a very good wargamer. I didn't think I was a good player. What I knew was I had good potential. But in order to have good potential, I had to be able to own my mistakes, and I could never pass the buck somewhere else. I could never pass the buck off on, oh, dice screwed me, or oh, my opponent just had me completely cornered. I always had to find what decision I could have made different. And once I started stacking these up, I became a much better player. So here's the rule for this series that we're going to be going through. And there's a lot of these, okay? If you made the decision, you own the outcome. Even if it fails, even if it hurts, even if it was uncomfortable, man. And after your next game, don't ask what went wrong. I want you to ask one question. Just one question, okay? What decision would I not make again? Just one. So I actually want you guys to type down in the comments below. What is a decision that you've made in a game that you're like, oh, that was just clearly the wrong decision? Here's what I need to do instead. I want you to type that out. That's going to be good for your brains, and it's going to be great for the algorithm. So, too. So it's good for me, and it's good for you, because it's going to help you guys recognize that, okay, this was a really bad decision, but this is how I fix that decision in the next game. Good. So now, guys, this series of psychology in Warhammer 40,000 is not about motivation. It's about seeing yourself clearly. If this video felt slightly uncomfortable because, like, oh, this guy's attacking me for not owning decisions, well, that's a good thing, because, yeah, that's what's happening. Next episode, we're going to go over a phrase that quietly ruins your improvement on the tabletop. And it's a phrase that you all use. And we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to fix it. This phrase is, I'll try. All right, until next time, Grots and Gets. I hope you all have an amazing week. This video series will be once per week. I'll be back with other tactical and strategic stuff like normal for the rest of this week. And then this weekend, I'm going to go see if I can earn myself a golden ticket. So stay tuned. Hope you all have a great day. Crump on. Bye-bye.